What's going on, YouTube? I'm just doing a quick video on my 2000 Lincoln Continental. The problem I had was my belt tensioner pulley went out. I was hearing some growling sounds coming from under the hood, and basically came to realize that, well, at first I thought it was my alternator, because the noise was coming from somewhere in this area right here, and you really couldn't pinpoint where it was. I'd already changed out my idler pulley, and basically the next best thing was my alternator. I took that off, took it apart, and looked at it, and there was dust built up on the bearings. It looked like it had gotten hot because the paint was peeling off the cooling fan. So I went ahead and changed it. Guess that wasn't it. But honestly, it needed to be changed anyway because it was about to go out. This all started, I'm going to do a little backstory here. This all started when my power steering pump went out. I watched the video on how to change out the power steering pump, which is a total pain in the butt because you do actually have to remove the AC compressor in order to get to the power steering pump, which is underneath. So you have to take off the tire, take off the wheel well, and there's another gentleman that had a video on here, and it was a good video. It told you exactly what to do. However, he had refrigerant oil, like green oil, all over the ground and all over his parts, and everything was all greasy. So I kind of I didn't have that problem because I went ahead and evacuated my refrigerant system before I started. The mess that came with it, I collected all my coolant that dumped out the bottom, because you do have to remove the coolant line also that goes in the bottom of the motor by the thermostat. So I was able to remove all that and had very little mess. So after I replaced the power steering pump, there was a small drop of coolant on my frame rail, and with that being said, the very next weekend my water pump went out, so then I replaced my water pump. At the same time as my water pump, I went ahead and replaced the idler pulley, which is this one right here. So this is brand new. I think this is a 1/2 inch, will fit on here. It's a little tight, so I think it's actually metric, but took that off. That one was real easy. And then after that, this has been about 2 months now. Pretty much my last accessory on the front of this motor, besides the alternator, is now my tensioner pulley. This is essentially what it looks like right here. Now my spring is in really good shape, so I'm only doing my pulley, but I'll show you what my pulley looked like. There's the old one. Yep, there's absolutely no bearing left in that whatsoever. Here's the inner race that I had to remove. So shortly after I was driving it, it was growling. A bunch of stuff. It sounded like I ran through gravel, but it was probably all the bearings coming out of there. When you do remove this, as you can see, I left the tire on. It was simple enough. I did have to jack up the car slightly and then put another jack underneath the oil pan in order to lift the engine up about 1 inch, because if not, the bolt that goes through the middle hits on the frame rail right there in front of it. So I did take off the tension pulley just to be easier, or sorry, the idler pulley, and then I took off the bolt once I had jacked the motor up, and then I was able to take it out through the top, but that might have been because my pulley fell off, and so I'll find out when I put it back in if I can put it back in through the top with the pulley on it. I did not take off the coolant. It's out of the way. I did take off the reservoir bottle though, and if you disconnect the line at the bottom, disconnect the overflow line at the top, and disconnect the sensor, and as soon as you take it loose, you tip it up, you only lose maybe 1/2 cup of coolant. So pretty easy. The power steering reservoir, you unbolt it and just kind of pull it over out of the way. Yes, you will be kind of fighting with it the whole time. Alright, the reason you have to jack the motor up, like I said, is because you have to clear the center bolt that basically holds everything together. Actually, I got this backwards. But anyway, I have my the new pulley is on. I did grease the center when I put it back together. And like I said, this basically goes down through here, and this has to clear the frame. This is a T40, right there, T40 Torx bit. This is it. And this is the only thing that I have that's T40. I do have bits, but they only go up to T30. So with this, I used a little cheater pipe in order to break it loose. As you can see, the threads aren't very big on there. This thing has 130,000 miles on it almost, and the bolt's really clean still. I just about guarantee this is original. But it broke free fairly easy. So like I said, getting ready to throw this back in, and I'll show you when it's all done. So he's back together. I did end up having to bring the tensioner back up from underneath, because with the pulley on there, it just won't slide in between the frame rail and the block. So got it fed up in there. Like, honestly, the hardest part in this thing is getting that stupid belt fed back on there. That's such a pain in the tail. But like I said, I didn't lose much coolant. Everything's back on. Probably reassembly took 20 minutes maybe. But once you get it fed up in there, it's easy. And then the 3/8 drive breaker bar, right, let's see, right on this tab here to bend it up. Anytime you do work on the front of this motor, you absolutely have to take this the coolant reservoir out, because there's just no room if you don't. Even putting the tensioner on there, you have about, whoops, get out of the way. You have about that much room right there, and even the handle barely fits in there. I think, I don't know, it feels like maybe about 40 pounds of pressure you have to use to loosen the belt, and using one, maybe two fingers on that just to slide them in there and pick up is almost impossible. But anyway, it's back together. I'm going to go ahead and put the reservoir back on and fire it up. Burn that coolant off there. Okay, we'll call that good.